there.
Okay. We'll hope for the best.
Turn it the other way.
No, I got it looking at him.
Yeah. Some of them do different things. Anyway, first, Beverly, you were way too kind. I'm just Mr. Ralph Ginorio. Professor, you need a doctorate for that, and I didn't want to go through that much brainwashing. That actually leads us into what the topic of the speech is today. What's permitted on college campuses becomes normal in society 10 or 15 years later. When I went to college in the early 1980s, early to mid-1980s, colleges still pretended to be places where everyone could think forbidden thoughts. Back in the Middle Ages, the first universities established as cathedral schools were walled in like Jewish ghettos. And you may ask, why would you put walls around a university? Well, the reason is, within that cloister, ideas that could be subversive, dangerous, that could provoke revolution, were permitted because you were within a group of people that were there for education, that were capable of imagining ideas without immediately going and grabbing pitchforks and torches. Universities were the one place in Christendom where people could speak ideas that would get them burned at the stake as heretics or apostates anywhere else, because within that environment it was safe. Now, both the martyr of the scientific revolution, Galileo Galilei, and Martin Luther, the founder of the Protestant Reformation, were both advised by the Roman Catholic Church, who was at that point the moderator of culture, to write in Latin and speak within the cloisters of a university, because then those ideas would be given the exposure that they deserved. Certain Jesuit astronomers had confirmed Galileo's theories without damaging the fabric of society, without calling into question in the minds of most people the legitimacy of popes and kings. The idea was that the dangerous ideas would be contained within a university set of university walls, because those ideas need to be explored, they need to be expressed, but at the same time they should not be allowed to disturb the broader society. I hope you're following me so far. So colleges and universities became the one place within our Western civilization where one could say almost anything and not be punished for it, because it was understood that this is an environment where we're going to explore ideas and follow the logic train wherever it goes. And in my day, when I had hair up here and not down here, the colleges still presented themselves as these places of free ideas. But I saw the beginnings of an institutional monoculture that have made today's colleges intellectual gulags. A feminist group on Bates College campus had a poster made with all of the male students' faces, small but on it, saying potential sexual predator. Because the feminist ideology of that time said that all men are sexual predators. They're the ones that have acted on it yet, and the ones that haven't. Part of feminists' lovely thoughts of undermining traditional society as a patriarchy and dividing people along gender lines by making it impossible for their true believers to ever trust a man. I saw the beginnings of attempts to silence anyone. I remember there was a rally for the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. And they said, anyone can come up and say what they think. Well, I went up and I said that your speakers have been taken to tourist villages and are speaking communist propaganda. The Russians have whole towns devoted to credulous rubes from the West who come there and try to understand the future Soviet society that we'll all someday live under. The same thing had happened in Nicaragua. And of course, their free speech zone did not include me. I got quickly, my mic was cut, and I was moved off the stage. My wife was called a traitor to her sex because she was a conservative Republican. I was called a traitor to my race because my father is Cuban Puerto Rican. I have relatives who were murdered by Castro and other relatives who lived for a long time under Castro in his prisons. So, universities, as open places where any idea could be brought up, were becoming closed to anything other than the ideals of the hippies of the 60s who became the professors of the 80s and the current terms are social justice warrior woke activists. In the 1990s, I heard from colleagues of mine who went to Bates after I did, that in the name of environmentalism, forgive me while you're eating breakfast, nobody can flush the toilet except every 5 or 10 uses because we want to save the planet. And that's a way of saving the planet through filth and horrible smells because you feel it. You feel like you're a part of it. That's what they want. My niece went to college 5 years ago. My niece is the daughter of a Presbyterian minister. She went there as an agnostic and as a libertarian. Not even a conservative.
And half Chinese.
Yes, her mother escaped from China just before Tiananmen Square.
That's not me.
Okay. In any event, in a history classroom, she expressed an idea that was not orthodox. And she was shouted down, not argued with, but shouted down by fellow students who followed her out of the classroom after the bell rang, saying, "We hope you burn." That's a quote. Now imagine being an 18-year-old girl, somewhat shy, surrounded by frothing classmates, wishing that. Now they pulled that nonsense on both Tina and I in the 80s, and being a bellicose Bronxite, I fought back. I argued with them, and she did the same. Our niece ended up leaving that college, spending a year getting her stuff back together, and she went back to a different college and just got her degree a month ago. Because colleges specifically, and education in general, is so dominated by one idea, the idea of the left, they are double plus good duck speak zones. That's a George Orwell term. Orwell is one of the only two honest former communists that I know of in all of human history. The other one is Doris Lessing. Because Orwell was a true believer in the ideals of communism. I think he's foolish for that, but he actually put his life on the line in the Spanish Civil War for that, had the courage of his convictions. But when he was driven out of Republican Spain, communist Spain, by the Soviet NKVD, his eyes were open to what Soviet Russia was really like. And he ended up writing 1984 about it. And in the book 1984, Orwell says that the ultimate freedom is the ability to say 2 + 2 = 4. In other words, the ability to speak what is up here without fear and to act from the basis of conscience. So Orwell finally came around to what is behind the American dream. The American dream isn't the materialist idea that I hope my kid has it better off than I do. The American dream is to have a free society that works. We have freedom of religion for one reason, so that each of us can explore God without fear of government reprisals, without realizing suddenly that the king's religion is not my variant of Christianity and I am in deep, deep trouble. We don't have freedom of religion to explore atheism. We have freedom of religion to explore the nature of reality as far as your mind and your heart and your spirit can carry you. So Orwell finally comes around to this. This freedom died on most college campuses 20 years ago or more. And the rest of us went on with our lives, most of us. We conservatives have ceded, C-E-D-E-D, education to the communists. We have ceded it to left-wingers who are utopian materialists who believe in fundamentally restructuring society and murdering any naturally evolved freedoms that we have developed. They view the world through an environmentalist lens. Environmentalism is like a watermelon. It's green on the outside, but it's red on the inside. The world, they say, is finite. So finite that we must manage our resources like a group of people on starvation rations. The enemy of the world is human freedom, because you can't trust people to do the right thing. And this assumption that man-made climate change is real, and that the answer to man-made climate change is a global socialist order, is fundamental, unreflected upon, basic idea of the global environmental movement. This idea was first promulgated on college campuses. Anyone who was a professor or a student who objected to it was ostracized, shunned, driven out, because these oh-so-tolerant people cannot afford to engage in a genuine debate. Because their policies, their proposals, and their ideas are really very shallow. And they ultimately end up with feudalism, what Friedrich Hayek once called a return to serfdom. Their solution to the problems of the world is a new feudal order where socialist technocrats rule for the benefit of all and everyone keeps their place. Well, these ideas in the name of saving the planet were first promulgated on college campuses. But as of the beginning of the third millennium, they became the basic assumption from which science, particularly biological and earth science, is taught within most schools K through 12. So now we have people who are of military age who have been raised and educated in schools by teachers who believe that they are doing good, that they are doing the right thing, by teaching that the global climate is on the razor's edge and all that will save it is more regulation, more regulation, more regulation. Because that's what they learned in college in the 1990s, in an uncritical echo chamber. Because we conservatives do not enter the education field in large numbers, because we actually believe in free expression, because we have the confidence and the courage of our convictions to engage in a genuine debate and a give and take with people, we have not insisted on certain things at the college level. And our neglect has brought about the situation that we have now. The anarchists who run that neighborhood in Seattle, who have been allowed to run that neighborhood in Seattle by that cowardly mayor, are run by people who are products of the university system of the 1990s and early 2000s. And the mobs are comprised of people who have been educated in schools where you are not taught how to think, but you are taught what to think. What is permitted on college campuses will become the norm in broader society in 10 or 15 years. And the power that the general talked about the BLM movement having is a result of this echo chamber, this intellectual gulag. I am from the Bronx. I went to an elementary school that was 85% black and Puerto Rican at a time when that really mattered. I am happy to discuss race issues with anyone because, according to the race police, I'm not even white. I'm half white. My mom was Irish. And if you know anything about European history, you know that the Irish weren't considered, any great shakes either. There's a scene from Blazing Saddles where the villains say, yeah, we'll take the Chinese and we'll take the blacks, but no Irishmen. Okay? So I am happy to talk to anyone because I believe that the antidote to racism is freedom. Since the Civil Rights Act of 1964, many in the minority community have squandered their opportunities. The chances that they had for freedom that were given to them by President Johnson and by Senator Dirksen and by all the other people who signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the opportunity to live in a society that is colorblind has been squandered by activist groups that insist on seeing nothing but race. The answer, in my opinion, to the problem of racism is not more racism, is not calculating how many black coaches there are in the NFL compared to others, is not calculating how many female executives, chief executive officers, or board members there are. I don't recall ever being in heaven before being born, picking my race, picking my sex, picking my class, picking my nation. I think God chose that for me. And yet, today the Black Lives Movement is acting as if anyone who isn't them should feel ashamed. And they are using something from deep in Asiatic tradition. Westerners tend to rely on internal guilt to keep people in line. Christianity, Judaism, even Roman law all depend upon people monitoring their own actions. But in Asia, particularly East Asian societies, it's public shaming. The Confucians did that, the communists in China did that, and do that, and they still do it in North Korea. So, what the general talked about in terms of anyone who questions their orthodoxy just being labeled a racist, I'm bellicose enough to say, yeah, prove it. Prove it. Prove I'm a racist. But I'm not just me. I'm also a member of my school, a school that's already under attack because it's a charter school. I do not censor myself too much, but I admit I censor myself a little bit because I don't want to bring doom down upon my school, my colleagues. The worst form of censorship is self-censorship. And I guess I'm ashamed of what I just had to admit. Because part of me wants to go out there as publicly as I can and say, fine, I disagree with BLM. I disagree with their fundamental assertion that there is institutional racism in police departments. My mom was a detective from 1976 until 1996. She had the highest conviction rate on her police force. Every day when I was growing up, like any family of cop, I didn't know whether she was coming back. The police are the thin blue line between us and chaos. And the self-same people who advocate defunding the police also advocate disarming us, leaving us prey to their mob. All of this began on campuses. All of this became the norm on college campuses. You can advocate for a Palestinian state, you can support Hamas and Hezbollah and the Iranian Ayatollahs, you can support North Korea, the Chinese communists, you can support anyone you want, but not Israel, not the United States. You can teach about the good in every society, but not Western civilization, not the American variant of Western civilization. We can't afford, as conservatives, to continue to permit schools to go their own way. I have been trying to, and I hope I'll at some point speak to the board that's talking about new standards. I've advocated a 4-year high school curriculum. 2 years of Western civilization, ancient and modern, 2 years of United States history, up to the Spanish-American War when we developed as an internal republic, and after the Spanish-American War in the 4th year to talk about the United States as the global superpower. Getting there anyway. The attack on history that I face, that we face, also comes from universities. From divesting in South Africa in the 1980s to ripping down Confederate memorials today. The idea is that we can save ourselves by being ignorant. This is a fundamental Marxian concept. It's behavioral psychology. It says that the only thing that matters is what a person is intentionally taught. And the utopia that communists offer is, if only we don't teach our children evil, they'll never understand evil. Baloney. We're human beings. We have a nature that is both angelic and demonic. We can be killers and we can be saviors. The idea that by being ignorant of our past, we will somehow be freed from its limitations is utopian drivel. It is nonsense. But it is the ideal that they teach. It is the magic and the voodoo that they advocate. We can have a future without want, without hate, without any of this stuff that we have. We can have a future that's perfect. Have you ever met a perfect person capable of living in perfection? The notion of heaven is after we die, we are perfected by God. So, my point is this. Above and beyond adding history to high school curriculums, conservatives should consider defunding any state college or university that has speech codes, diversity programs, or any of this other panoply of social engineering and programming. No state university in a state as conservative as Idaho should permit the University of Idaho to restrict speech on campus the way it does. As to private colleges and institutions, let the market decide. But honestly, if you support your alma mater, find out what the heck your alma mater is doing. Find out what it's like. If your alma mater, if your college, the college that you care about or went to, is a place where free ideas and expressions are suppressed, don't give them another bleeping dime. Colleges and universities are ridiculously funded anyway. As federal aid has increased, so have college tuitions. It's a completely artificial tuitions that people pay these days. So I suggest that conservatives go after education. Not like Luddites, not like a bunch of people with torches and pitchforks, but as people who love genuine education. My final point is this. As a conservative, I love liberals for this reason. The West is the only society on earth that has a reformed tradition. Nobody else. Chinese, Islamic. No, their society is changed by violence, war, revolution, and a new dynasty coming in. But our society reforms itself. Protestant Reformation, the American Revolution, the American Civil War, the 60s, all of that was about making us better. And as much as I get annoyed by these liberal idiots, and I don't mean communists here, I mean liberals, old-fashioned progressive liberals, I have to admit, without them our society would be in trouble. Because they point out where we fit. But we also need a healthy conservative group that is not afraid to say, I'm an American, I'm proud of it, I am going to insist that freedom exists on campuses, and I am going to resist a woke corporate culture of 2 generations of brainwashed drones who have been taught that the best way to make the world a better place is to silence dissent and oppress opposition. That has to stop. I'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you for indulging me. I hope I didn't range too freely. I hope you had an idea. College must change if we're going to have society improve. Do you have any questions? Sir.
So, if we had control of the board of North Idaho College as conservatives, what would you recommend?
Okay, I don't know NIC very well. I don't even know University of Idaho very well, but I'm pretty darn sure they have diversity requirements in their admissions policies, that they have speech codes on campus, that they have codes about what pronouns people are allowed to use in formal papers. All of that needs to go. Look, as a Christian conservative, if a lesbian Satanist wanted to express themselves, I believe in their freedom of speech. Because their freedom of speech is my freedom of speech. You limit one person's speech, you limit everyone's. All of this control over speech, control over thought has to stop. So that's my basic answer. Other questions, if any? Sir?
If you went to Berkeley,
His head would
is it okay
explode.
to support the crew team and nothing else?
If the crew team is, yeah, look, first of all, who am I to say? Secondly, sure, crew team, but Berkeley, man. The
Not
thing is,
another penny for anything.
look, I wouldn't mind if Berkeley existed as Berkeley, as long as every other college in the country except Hillsdale didn't want to be a little Berkeley. My problem is everyone emulating that. I have no problem with an ultra-left university or a set of them. I just want a choice for our kids. And you know, our high schools today are so, everyone's got to be college ready. Everyone's got to, no, first of all, college isn't for everyone. It's not good for everyone. It's an indoctrination center these days. That's why college is for everyone, so that everyone can learn that America's bad and that we owe the world everything and all this nonsense. College has to change if we're going to change society, and we need to step up. That's my idea. Sir, oh, I'm sorry. Please go.
It's a tough.
You bet it is. We are in a cultural war, and I didn't even mention Hong Kong. What's going on there? Going into the Chinese Communist Party, what they're doing, but we are in a global struggle. The Cold War is back, and with a vengeance. And there are people within this country who would love us to go the way of Mao's China. In fact, the people in the Seattle neighborhood are talking about the French Revolution. In the French Revolution, people had their heads chopped off because they said, "Good morning, mister. Good afternoon, ma'am." Because monsieur and madame were bourgeois terms, were ancien regime terms. No, you got to call everyone citoyen, citizen. And if you don't call everyone citizen, you're a thought criminal. I swear to God. The thing that scares me the most is that these kids have been taught groupthink to such an extent that I could see them engaging in the kind of fanaticism that the Nazis did. I mean, they call themselves Antifa, anti-fascists, but they have tactics and ideology straight out of Nazi Germany and straight out of Mao's China. And that includes the willingness to take people that we have personal relationships with and break into their homes and beat them to a bloody pulp or worse. And I never thought that could happen in America. But the people educated in these colleges and in the schools staffed by graduates of these colleges, yeah, I can see it happening. Sir?
It's gone down into the grade schools because my grandkids are getting taught some of the same type of stuff. And then when they take history away, they have no way of knowing what they could change from. And they're doing that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like the curriculum of the politics, how it progressed and stuff, they don't even get any of that civics type of stuff anymore.
Mm-hmm. Well, at my school they do,
Yeah.
and I think at Bjorn's school they do. But in general terms, the effort is to get rid of history. California, People's Republic, California got rid of the mandatory requirement for high school U.S. history. If we don't understand our history, we are not able to fight this.
That's right.
And so the teaching of history is fundamental, and that's why my real initiative is to get history 4 years. If you want a high school diploma, you take 2 years Western Civ, 2 years U.S. history, so that you understand, the massacres and the glories, the good and the bad, so that you can think about it and talk about it. Otherwise, you're just prey to tyrants. And the elementary level is even worse, because, God, talk about a collective group thing. Yeah, elementary school teachers are weird anyway to me. I'm a high school teacher. I don't understand that. But yeah, no, it is pretty locked in. And your grandkids have you. And you're going to have to compensate for what they learn to some extent.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned China because I've been thinking a lot about this, and I've got some hot takes on China that you may not completely agree with. So I'd love to get your take on this.
Okay.
So I'm looking at the Byzantine Empire and the Sassanid Empire fighting each other and destroying each other so that the Islamic civilization could take over both.
Interesting
Right?
thesis, yes.
So then, you look at America and China, right? China is a different civilization, but it is a source of order, right? And right now it seems like many, particularly on the center left, are empowering all the kind of disaffected minority groups in China. The Uyghurs, Muslim Uyghurs, the homosexuals in China, all these different groups saying, hey, your country is against you, join the new global order and overthrow your Han overlords. I don't see that as quite a good thing and something that we should be doing.
Okay.
What do you think?
I respect you. I like the Heraclius, the Emperor Heraclius thesis on the Byzantines and the Sassanids, the new Persian Empire. But the People's Republic of China is not traditional China. One of the four holds that Mao went after in the 50s and 60s was Confucian culture. Confucius is the Asiatic equivalent of Jesus Christ, not in terms of the Godhead, but in terms of influence. Confucius did come up with a philosophy of social harmony and order. And that idea inspired China, Korea, Japan, Vietnam to establish societies that basically look at the family as the most important thing and the individual as a subset of family. The Chinese communists, when they came in, instituted a nationwide terror that isn't even referenced in most histories because it pales in comparison to the greatest mass murder in human history, the Great Leap Forward of the 1950s, early 60s, and the Cultural Revolution of the 1960s, 70s. In those moments, we have something far worse than happened in Russia. Because in Russia, it was the KGB that murdered. In China, everyone was implicated because everyone was involved. Each individual in China was expected to inform on their family and take part in shaming them publicly or beating them or even killing them. People were induced to cut their own tongues out. A Chinese nun, a Buddhist nun, was induced to cut her own tongue out. Because the first step that happened when the Chinese took over, the communists took over, was everyone has to write confessions. And these confessions are given to the party. So everyone is guilty, everyone except Mao. This totalitarian approach to society is the same ethos that rules China today. Xi Jinping is not limited by the good in traditional China. Xi Jinping is dedicated to one thing, power, without restraint. And the way that he boasts power, instead of attacking the Jews like Hitler did, he talks about the century of shame. The Chinese Communist Party talks about the time between the 1842 Opium War and the 1949 liberation of China by the communists. Anti-Westernism, anti-Japanesism, xenophobia against all foreigners. China needs to stand up, Mao said. What Xi is doing is building a 19th century empire with 99-year treaties in Pakistan and Djibouti, getting debt traps, arranging debt traps for most African countries and many European countries. China is not traditionally satisfied, should I say, with just running China. China traditionally is very isolationist. Not today.